Welcome to the New Yorker Festival, number, what is it, 8th? We like doing this at the magazine because we get to present to you people that we admire and write about, get out from behind our desks, which is both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. I guess I figured out something was going on in comedy that was new a lot later than many of you did in this room. And that was when I saw 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I came out of it and said, this is not American Pie. This is something really different. One of my distinguished predecessors, Pauline Kael, used to put down movies by saying that they were deep on the surface, meaning that there was nothing underneath. This movie was shallow on the surface, and there were endless depths underneath. And it was certainly foul-mouthed, but it was also about, oh God, shyness and bluster and illusion and delusion and many, many other fascinating things. And if anything, it was a song of innocence, which ended with this amazing hilltop hymn to love, which was a very dangerous thing to have shot. But you pulled it off, I must say. It was deserved, it was earned. Now, those of you who had seen Freaks and Geeks on television in 1999-2000, already knew something about this comic sensibility. I'm just catching up to some of that. The great thing about these two guys is, even though Seth is disgustingly young, 25, he's been working with Judd for almost 9 years, and so we'll be able to go through some of that history. Now, if you print out Judd's credits on IMDb, this invaluable database that you probably all know about, you get 3 single-spaced pages of stuff. So I'm just going to run through the highlights very, very quickly. He's 39 years old, the pride of Syosset, Long Island. Mother worked in a comedy club in Southampton where I didn't know anyone had a sense of humor, but real estate jokes, maybe. Anyway, interviewed established comics when he was in high school on the high school radio station, which had 10 watts of power. Wattage is a little higher now. Attended USC for 2 years, dropped out, roomed with Adam Sandler for a while, and knew other young comics as well as Gary Shandling, wrote for a lot of them, did stand up himself and gave it up. I want to ask him about that. And wrote The Cable Guy in '96. Paul Feig created Freaks and Geeks in '99. And Judd wrote a fair amount of it, directed 3 episodes. It was canceled after 18.
Well, after 13, we shot 18.
You shot 18, and only 13 were aired?
13 aired, and then they dumped.
And then Undeclared was like 2 years later?
Yes.
And was also canceled? Do you ever wake up in the night and have like revenge fantasies against that? Was it one guy who did both cancellations?
Well, the same guy canceled Undeclared who canceled Freaks, the Ben Stiller show. Was the first show I created with Ben. And I don't want to start out with a Randy joke, but...
oh, yes, you do. As
I realized we were about to be canceled, that day, Time magazine put out a list of the 10 best shows on TV, and they had Undeclared on there. And I knew we were about to get canceled, so I framed it and put a Post-it on it and sent it to him, and the Post-it said, "I don't understand how you can fuck me in the ass when your penis is still in me from last time."
I'm sure that you will...
It's the New Yorker, you know? It's classic.
Exactly. It's the crowd.
You don't hear John Updike say that.
Mr. Sean, the very squeamish editor of the New Yorker for 30 years, has probably turned over in his grave so many times. In the last 15 years, he's like burrowed to Hackensack. But that document, I'm sure, will be deposited at Harvard University in the Apatow papers. Yes. Among Judd's most recent feats was that he held off Stephen Colbert during a pretty rough outing in the summer, and he managed to get the words Jew and penis onto national television, although not always in conjunction with each other. And you said...
That's scary, Colbert.
You described the penis as the last frontier. Was that the Jewish penis you were referring to? And
well, that's... I guess the first frontier is the Jewish penis, and then actually the last frontier is the uncircumcised penis in a movie.
I won't touch that.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there? Okay. Seth was born in Vancouver, started performing stand-up comedy in a lesbian bar when he was 13. Is that correct?
It is.
Now, was this before or after your bar mitzvah, and what in the world was your material?
It was after my bar mitzvah, and it was very just about my life, kind of about, you know, my grandparents and my bar mitzvah and high school and trying to meet girls and stuff like that. You know?
I don't want to get too personal here, but were you like prematurely testosterone? When did you get that bottom octave?
The bottom, the bass? I don't know. I always had a raspy voice.
Raspy.
Years of physical mistreatment to myself have
raspy
made this what happened.
Now, so you weren't chased across the border by the Mounties or anything like that. You were in Vancouver, and Apatow shows up with a casting call. Is that right, for Freaks and Geeks? I'd love to hear that first encounter from both sides.
From my side, it was, I had been doing stand-up for a while, and it became clear I was going to fail out of high school, so I thought I should try to get some money. So I had gotten an agent through doing stand-up comedy, and I said, you know, maybe I should start to audition for things, just because stand-up comics don't make a lot of money just from doing stand-up comedy. So she said, okay, and Freaks and Geeks was the first or second audition I got sent out on, and Judd was in there, and Paul Feig was in there, who I actually recognized from the movie Ski Patrol, which he's in, which I was a big fan of. So the whole time, I didn't actually pay that much attention to Judd, because I was like, the fucking guy from Ski Patrol was here. And that was shocking to me. No one warned me. I thought, like, they warn you when something like that happens. But I got in there, and I read the scene, and I remember they laughed really hard, and I remember walking out thinking, like, if I don't get that, I don't know what they're looking for, because they really seem to laugh at that, unless it's bullshit, and they just do that with everybody.
So
they do that for everyone.
Yeah, they do. I do.
In fact, when we were putting together the Freaks and Geeks DVD, we were putting everyone's auditions on the DVD. And Paul Feig, because he was an actor
in Ski Patrol,
and 3 O'Clock High, and Heavyweights.
3 O'Clock High.
He felt bad for every actor, so he would laugh at everyone's jokes all the time, because he just felt so bad for the suffering life of an actor. And Jake, at the end of every audition, would go, "That was great."
Yeah.
And I realized that I had all the auditions on the DVD, and every single one ended with Jake going, "That was great."
You just loop that.
Like
a big montage of it.
But Seth, I saw on a videotape at home, and they sent me like 30, 40 people from Vancouver, and we wrote a generic freak scene to just see who had an interesting personality, which was about a kid explaining that he was going to grow pot underground, and if the cops came, he would explode the entrance to the tunnel. And then they would just see that he had grown corn above ground, and he would say he was a corn farmer. That was the premise of it. And
I related to it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, we just made this movie, Pineapple Express, which is about a drug dealer growing pot underground. So we didn't let go of that dream.
As Seth, you were writing from a very early age with Evan Goldberg, and I think I read that the first version of Superbad was commenced when you were 15. Now, were you writing about guys who were 17 when you were 15?
No, I think we were actually maybe even a little younger, around 13 or 14. But no, it was about guys our age. The characters just slowly got older as we got older until we graduated, and then we couldn't take the characters with us beyond that point. But it was about, you know, the whole graduation thing was actually added relatively later on in the process. To kind of, people said, like, why is this so significant time in their lives? And to us, it didn't really need to be. It was just like kind of a day in the life of these kids.
So you kept writing it and rewriting it over a period of years?
Yeah, for around 12 years.
So maybe it was a mitzvah that you were rebuffed in getting the thing done, and
no, it
just got better.
Oh, yeah, if they made it when we were 12, I mean, it would be pathetic.
But the penis sequence was in draft 1.
It was. I mean, what's sad is actually a fair amount of the jokes that are in the movie were in the draft we wrote when we were 12 years old. And it's sad reading it because, like, I have not gotten any funnier in the last 15 years of my life.
I don't think you have to worry. Judd, you said somewhere that when you were doing stand-up comedy that you found it hard to develop a persona for yourself as a stand-up comic. And that struck me as interesting because I'd never heard anyone say that. Now, you've distributed your experiences and adolescent stuff into like 6 different characters by now as a writer. But explain what that meant.
Well, I did stand-up when I was 17 years old, and you really don't have any life experience to draw on. So, and I wasn't mad about anything. You know, stand-up comedians are pissed off. You know, that's, you know, the Lewis Black way. You know, you have to be, like, mad, like George Carlin, or you have to be kind of ingenious, like Stephen Wright, which I was neither. And so I felt it on stage that I was just kind of like a really bad Bill Maher, you know? And because he was one of the guys I really looked up to then. And so I would go on the road, and I used to open up for Jim Carrey on the road, and I would watch him, and I would think, wow, he's a lot better than I am. He seems to have other gifts that I don't have. And so I gave up.
And you wrote for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was easy to write for other people. I could sit in my house when I was 20 years old and write jokes for Roseanne Barr about stretch marks, which was very weird. But I could write it. I remember I had one joke, and I really don't understand how I wrote this at 20, because I didn't even know what a stretch mark was, which was, the only way to get rid of stretch marks is you have to put on another 10 pounds just to bang it out. And so I wrote for Roseanne for a year, and I'd go to her house and hang out with her and Tom and write jokes. But I wasn't really thinking about my own personality.
But not Steve Martin.
I never wrote for Steve Martin. But Steve Martin really was the defining person in my interest in comedy, because when I was about 10 years old, that's when Steve Martin hit. And there was just nothing greater than watching Saturday Night Live and seeing Steve Martin and The Jerk and everything that he was doing. One time I was in California, and I happened to know where he lived. And so anytime I was with my grandmother driving around, I would go, just drive by Steve Martin's house, and maybe we'll see him outside. And not thinking I ever would, but it was just fun to see his house. And then one day we drive by, and there's Steve Martin, like, washing his car. And I'm like, stop the car, that's Steve Martin! And I run out with my pen, and I say, Steve, can I have an autograph? And he said, no, I'm sorry, I don't sign autographs at my house. And I said, well, will you sign it in the street? And he said, no, I can't. People would start coming to my house to ask for autographs, which is actually an incredibly reasonable request, but to me, he was just a dick. And so I begged him. I said, I won't tell anyone where you live. And so I go home, and I'm so mad. I mean, I'm like really mad. I just take out a pen, and I write him a letter, and it says, Dear Steve, you are the funniest man on earth, but you treat your fans like shit. You wouldn't live in that house if I didn't buy your records and go to your movies. And if you do not send me a written apology, I will send your address to Homes of the Stars, and you'll have tour buses passing by 24 hours a day. And I put it in his mailbox and went back to New York. And then 3 months later, in the mail, I get a book of Cruel Shoes in the mail. And it says in it, this is in 1981, I think. It says, to Judd, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was speaking to the Judd Apatow. And in a way, it's funny, because I was thinking about it recently, the impact of that story, which I'm sure he's annoyed that I tell all the time. But it's my best story. But I wanted to be involved in comedy, and the fact that you could meet Steve Martin was exciting, and the fact that I thought, well, maybe my letter made him laugh enough that he would send me a letter back made me, on some level, believe that I could be a part of the world that he was in. So it actually was one of the nicest things anyone ever did for me in terms of inspiring me to attempt this.
When Seth and his partner Evan Goldberg were sort of working with you in Los Angeles, I read somewhere that you set them writing exercises, like come up with 10 comic ideas in the next 3 days or whatever. Mm-hmm. So Were there other writers who you were schooling this way? This really sounds like a, like fencing master or karate kid or something.
Well, Seth's partner, Evan, was still going to college.
Oh, no.
When Undeclared ended, I thought, well, Seth is just going to work like crazy. I mean, at the very least, he's going to be the funny best friend, This guy's going to work like crazy. And then slowly we realized that no one seemed to agree with me and that Seth was not working. And so I, as the person that brought him to America from Canada, just felt like, well, what if he never works again? And then I've kind of ruined his life because he hasn't gone to college. And I thought
he was... finish high school.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Jesus. And I instantly saw, from day one that this was like one of the funniest guys I had ever encountered and that he was really capable of anything. And I really thought that when he was 16 years old, watching him act on the show and watching how his mind worked. And so Evan would come out sometimes in the summer, and they would do rewrites of Superbad, and we would get rejected, and then do more rewrites and table reads and rejections. And then I just started, trying to find ways for them to make money so they wouldn't have to go back to Canada.
Yeah.
So, Sasha Cohen asked, anyone who would be good to write for Ali G show? I'm like, Seth and Evan. There's money there. Yeah. And then one day I said, me and Leslie have this idea for a movie. Let's see if you can write it in 10 days. From the moment I told them the thought. And then they did that. And in a way, it kind of built their confidence, like, oh, you can finish a script quickly. And then it became paid gigs, some scripts. And those scripts, now we've made a few of them. Pineapple Express, which is a pothead action movie. Superbad wasn't getting greenlit, and I'm like, I don't think, maybe it's just not commercial enough.
Yeah.
What's a commercial idea? Oh, a marijuana action movie.
A really violent weed movie.
And so that just got made. And then Drill Bit Taylor, Seth wrote with Chris Brown, which is a movie based on an old John Hughes idea that he never wrote that we made, that's coming out in March, starring Owen Wilson. And that kept the boats afloat until the acting kicked in.
So let's get into Freaks and Geeks, and we can get the first clip going. It doesn't go zing, zing, zing like a sitcom. It's actually rather slow, plays rather slowly and meditatively, and it's melancholy, some of it, and it's about all sorts of painful things, as well as funny stuff. I mean, was that a very radical thing to do at that point, and is that why NBC lost faith in it?
Well, Paul Feig hated all the high school shows that were on TV, which were all filled with very handsome, pretty people. And he thought there should be a show about slightly less pretty people. He just thought there should be a show about kind of his goofy group of friends. And that was his inspiration to talk about his childhood in Michigan. And so that's how it all began. He had this idea of a show that moved a little slower. Because it was pre-MTV, his theory was it would be like what storytelling was before everything got sped up by MTV editing. And I was heavily influenced by Welcome to the Dollhouse. That's a movie that I thought about a lot when we were working on the show. And Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which Paul Feig claims he never saw.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
He's in it, isn't he?
He delivers the pizzas.
Exactly.
It's Taylor Negron, I'm sorry.
Well, some of those, I mean, I've been looking at it recently, and some of them are really go deep. And there's the episode where Jason Segel plays the guy who's not terribly bright and just wants to, more than anything else, be a drummer. And he plays with his friends, then goes to an actual audition for a real band and totally bombs.
Yeah, and then that's the end of the episode.
But that's getting kids where they live.
Yeah. No, it was a pretty dark episode. Here's your dream, you suck at it, the end of episode. Yeah. And we wondered why we were canceled.
I know. People don't want that.
And there's a kind of a Neo Howard Stern episode also, which we're about to look at.
Yes.
Well, you want to set that clip up?
Well, we were working on an episode, and we were trying to come up with this storyline for Seth to have a girlfriend. And it was near the end of the run, and we clearly knew that we were going to get canceled, so we were being a little bolder with our ideas as kind of a just fuck you to the network. Like, if you're going to cancel us, then we're going to do the episodes we want to do, and we'll just go down swinging, or as Michael O'Donoghue said when he was at SNL, go down like a burning Viking ship. And so the episode is about Seth's girlfriend telling him that when she was born with ambiguous genitals, and that the doctor had to choose what sex she would be. And so it's basically Seth's reaction, and the episode's like, will he break up with her, or will he be able to handle it? And we tried to handle it sensitively. And, you know, they were glad nominations. We did it right.
Actually, you did handle it sensitively. So can we roll that first clip?
So this is Seth about to tell his friends.
I think I'm gonna break up with Amy.
What? Why?
I just, you know, I don't really think we're right for each other.
Really? I thought you two were a sort of perfect couple.
Okay, look, I'm gonna tell you guys something now, and you have to promise not to be jerks about it and not to tell anyone, ever, okay?
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Amy's not really a girl.
What?
I mean, you know, she's a girl, but she's kind of part guy too.
What's that mean?
It means that when she was born, she was packing both a gun and the holster.
Well, does she still have, you know, the gun?
No. The doctors took care of it.
Okay. Well, then, she's a girl. I don't think it works that way. I think you better get rid of her.
I don't want to break up with her. Yeah, I really like her. I might even love her.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that mean you're gay?
I don't know. Does it?
I was joking.
Oh.
Every year is the same, and I feel it again. I'm a loser, no chance to win. Leaves start falling, come down is calling. Loneliness starts sinking in. But I'm one. I'm one. And I can see that this is me, and I will be. You'll all see I'm the one. That this is me, and I will be. You'll all see I'm the one. I'm the one. I'm the one.
That was a great piece of acting. I mean, you did there. I mean, it's really...
That was Martin.
In your scene.
Thank you.
That was really slow, that tempo there. Yeah. So, I mean, did you have to, like, guys, don't rush this, let it play? I mean, how did you remember, did you direct that? You directed that one.
I did. Jake Kasdan directed that.
Jake directed, okay.
Do you remember shooting that scene?
I do. You know, me and Jason and James really got along really well always on the show, and we had a good dynamic, and it was never our instinct to rush through things, I would say. I mean, we'll make a fucking meal out of it if we can. I'd say one line all day if I could. But it was always really easy. It never seemed like, a laborious process. It never seemed like it would take a really long time to get somewhere. I mean, everyone was really collaborative. It always seemed clear how to do it, I think.
And we just were thinking, how would these scenes really play out? In what span of time would this conversation play out? And then to just show that. We were trying to go anti-pacing. But when we did that episode, Jake and I watched it, and I remember watching it and just thinking, oh, Seth's a movie star. I mean, it just was clear, like, this is the kind of guy I want to watch in a movie. And in fact, if you look at Knocked Up, a lot of it is, the same kind of a comedic idea of something happening that's unexpected and you having to figure out if you're man enough to handle it correctly.
It's funny that I was just thinking that the nerds and the geeks have been winning for a long time now. I mean, when are girls going to figure out that the jocks, become used car salesmen, and the nerds become Jeff Apatow and Bill Gates? I mean, why aren't they onto that by now?
That's maybe they are. Any high schoolers here getting laid?
Yeah.
Any nerd getting a lot?
Exactly. Have you seen Kelsey Grammer's wife?
David Spade does okay.
David Spade, Bill Maher even? Come on.
40-year-old Virgin started as a skit, right, that Steve Carell did about a middle-aged guy who had never had sex?
Yeah, Steve, Steve was really funny when we were shooting Anchorman, like crazy funny, where Will and Rudd, we were all watching him every day going, what is going on with this guy? He's just playing so over his head every day.
Oh, it's crazy.
And so, of course, I said, hey, if you ever have any ideas for something you could star in, let's think of something. And then he came up to me and he said, I did this sketch at Second City that I played around with and never finished that was about a guy playing poker with his friends, and they're all telling really dirty sex stories, and slowly you realize that he's a virgin and his stories make no sense. And then he said, and his example was, how, like, when you're with a woman and you feel her breasts and it feels like bags of sand. And you know how, like, when you put your hand in a woman's panties and there's the baby powder.
Oh, yeah, that was...
And I just clicked in, just thought, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. And I was really afraid to direct a movie and had not really pursued it because I didn't feel, I just didn't feel like I would do a good job. And then I heard that idea and I said, unfortunately, I understand what it is. It's not like I was a virgin until I was 40, but I certainly had very long spans in between sex. I'd go a decade here and there. I understood the issue.
How it evolved into this enormous structure, though? Did you two of you then sit down and co-write it, work together in a room somewhere, or how did it go?
Yeah, he would come to the office and we would just, bang it out, and very quickly we realized that it should be very real and that the character should be quiet. See, there was a guy I knew who was a virgin who worked at the Improv in L.A., and he was really pissed off. I didn't know he was a virgin, but I saw him on Oprah or Phil Donahue, and I was like, what's that guy doing on Phil Donahue? And then the Chiron came up, 40-year-old virgin. And so I always remember that he was pissy, but me and Steve talked about it as almost like a Buster Keaton type character, that he would be quiet and then he could get mad, but he wouldn't be just the wallflower, that he would be a really normal person. And that came from going on the internet and finding all these blogs from middle-aged virgins, and they all just seemed a little just scared, and that it just got by them, that there wasn't any tragic thing that happened. It just got by them, and it was anxiety.
But it turns out his whole personality is shaped around this thing now.
Yes.
His consumer choices, his temperament, everything.
Yes.
Because he just can't get past that one thing. So
Yeah,
it's one of the most incredible pictures of neurosis, I guess, among other being hilariously funny.
Yeah,
Also,
it's something that, I don't know, I kind of understood what that was, and that's a lot of what Freaks and Geeks was, just terror of intimacy, and that people will think that you're a freak they'll discover the thing that you're afraid might be true.
Now, the trio in the Circuit City type store, Seth and Romany Balco and Paul Rudd are run off at the mouth constantly. Was that all that scripted, or I mean, because Malco takes off a couple of times into the stratosphere.
Balco's where you get steroids.
Balco's, yeah, something else.
Well, Seth was in my office the moment we got greenlit and got very aggressive about being in the movie.
I saw my moment. Judd was very happy at that moment. He was literally on the phone. He's like, "We're making it," and he was so happy. I was like, "Put me in it." I tried to like ride the celebration wave. He'll say yes to anything right now.
Well, in my head, I always wanted Seth to be in it, but I tried to get Seth to be the lead of Undeclared, and Fox Network said no.
They literally laughed.
And so I was just so afraid that, like, what if I want Seth to be the lead and they say to be one of the guys there, and they say no. So I was just hoping I could get it approved without telling him. And then he got aggressive in the meantime. But Seth was a giant inspiration on that movie because we couldn't get Superbad made, and as a result, Seth's theory of people want a really dirty movie, we put onto the 40-Year-Old Virgin, and so that made me a little more aggressive about it, and Seth was aggressive with Steve with being dirty.
Yeah, Steve had his reservations, I would say, about it. He actually had me write up a version of the script that was rated PG-13 at one point, and I did it just so he could see how lame it was. And I think he was underestimating his own sweetness and how much that would come across. Because I always thought, he's so likable and so nice that you could literally have the most despicable language and activity in the world surrounding him, but he's like the anchor of niceness, so you can kind of get away with any of that stuff. And I think it worked, luckily.
I mean, most of those personalities of the friends came up in a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing. We did a table read with all the actors, and I was so nervous that the script wouldn't be good enough to amuse Catherine Keener.
Yeah.
That we worked really hard on Catherine Keener's part because she's scary. You don't want Catherine Keener mad at you. Because she literally had just finished a Daniel Day-Lewis movie and a Sean Penn movie.
Yeah.
And then she's like with us idiots, And I'm like, I don't want her to notice that this was a career mistake for her.
Yeah.
So then we did a table read, and Catherine and Steve murdered, and Seth and Romney and Paul just ate it, yeah. And so then we went into rehearsal and played around, and we started telling sex stories and talking about our relationships. And Paul was very funny, being mad about women who broke his heart and playing the guy who couldn't get over it. And Romney had the craziest sex stories. I mean, he was like, I lost my virginity when I was 8.
Yeah. I was like, yeah.
And we were like, what? And he says that in front of Sharon Waxman from the New York Times. And I'm like, you know what? Let's not print the Romney lost his virginity when he was 8 story. Of course, it was in the New York Times. And he's like, and I'm like, isn't that like a molestation? He's like, no, I was into it.
Yeah.
Did that stay in the movie?
I actually shot a scene where it was a really funny scene where they get Steve Carell high, and they're all telling sex stories to make him feel better, like stories that show that they're insecure too. And then Romney tells the story of losing his virginity when I think we switched it to 11.
We made it like 11. We're like, 8 is crazy.
And then the joke was that he tells a story, and they all go like, oh, that's sick. And Romney gets like embarrassed, and but we cut that out.
Romney just couldn't play embarrassed.
Yeah.
All right, maybe let's roll the clip from 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's the fucking a grandma scene.
Perfect.
Yellow.
Hey, Cal.
Hey,
I just got back from the date.
Did you tell her you're a virgin?
No. I haven't gotten to that yet.
Really? Are you having sex right now?
No. She was incredible. She was amazing. She didn't pressure me. And she has 3 kids. And one of her kids has a kid. You all right?
Did you say that she has 3 kids, one of whom has a kid?
Yeah.
So she's a grandma?
No.
I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but... She's a fucking grandma.
Yeah, well, whatever, you know.
She's the hottest grandma I ever saw.
Yeah, she is. She's a hot grandma.
Good-looking grandma. My grandma looks like Jack Palance.
Well, she's no Jack Palance.
No, if Jack Palance looked like that lady, I would want to fuck Jack Palance right now.
Yeah, me too. She's a hot grandma.
Hey, yeah, no, do it, grandma, man. You should fuck her on her plastic-covered couch. Fuck her while she watches Murder, She Wrote. She would probably find that very erotic.
Yeah, well, whatever, you know.
Fuck her and then have her send you a check for $12 on your birthday.
I'm the dude with the hot granny.
Do
I will never again get to say fuck the grandmother.
And Katherine Keener was so cool because that's not an easy conversation to have with a young actress.
No.
We'd like to make you a grandmother in the movie. I mean, usually everyone's trying to not do that.
Yeah.
How did Knocked Ups originate? Was that your idea initially, or?
Well, I had a bunch of ideas about pregnancy because every time my wife and I went through childbirth, just terrible things would happen with the doctors and the nurses and people being mean or not showing up or me cursing someone out and them cursing me out. And so I thought, well, I got to write about this because it's so awful that I must get something from it. And so that was just in my head somewhere. And I like the idea of kind of a rushed pregnancy or something that sped it up because, you know, even when you plan it, it's so terrifying the entire time that I just thought, well, if you don't know the person, it would be way, way worse. And so Seth was talking to me and he was pitching some science fiction movie ideas, and I was trying to explain to him that I don't think anyone will make a $100 million Seth Rogen movie at this point. But you could do something simple because you're funny and 40-year-old virgin, and you're just sitting there on the phone. He doesn't even stand up in that scene. You don't need ghosts and goblins and fairies. I mean,
They'd be nice.
Yeah. I said, you could just get a girl pregnant. That'd be enough for a whole movie because, like, you with the gynecologist, you know. And then slowly I went, wait a second, my example may be worth writing. And so that's how it began.
And then I know that you had an early version of the script and you called in actors and you did a kind of table reading. Explain how that works.
Well, I wrote the first draft when I was producing Talladega Nights. It was just going well, so I would just go in my trailer and work on the movie. And then I came back, and then we very quickly did a table read with some people who weren't ultimately in the movie, just to see where we were. And then from that point on, you know, basically everyone is involved in the whole process. I'm asking everyone's help for ideas, and I'm trying to make it as specific to their personalities as possible. Seth is very uncomfortable around my kids, so I thought, well, that's funny. Seth's not one of those people you're like, you know what, I got to run out for 20 minutes. Will you hang out with the kid?
Yeah, it's unusual. There are, you know, legendary directors like Bergman and Ford and so on have worked with stock companies, but this must be fairly unusual in studio Hollywood today to be able to draw on this many people. I mean, some of them were working, some of them were not working. You were able to call them in and get them to read for you just like that. I mean, it's an amazing advantage.
The stock company is mainly Seth.
Yeah, and my idiot friends.
You know, I love all the people from Freaks and Geeks and thought it was a missed opportunity to show what they can do. And so it's fun to work with all those people. And I had a great time working with Paul Rudd on Anchorman. But the thing that really makes a lot of these movies possible is that when we do the auditions, Seth reads with every actor trying to get a part in the movie. So literally, by the time the movie's been shot, Seth has read with like 200 people. And and through that process, we figure out who his character is. And we try to problem solve all the issues of the movie. So we'll hold auditions for parts that, you know, we kind of know who we want, but just to hear it with that person and just to play around. And so that almost becomes the rehearsal of the movie.
Now, the guys in the house with Ben Stone were your friends.
Yeah, those are my actual friends. I've actually lived with almost all those people at one point or another in conditions humiliatingly similar to that of the movie, I would say. And it's funny because they kept coming to me during the rehearsal process and saying, like, you know, I don't get my character. And I kept saying, it's you, Jonah. They're like, am I for the pregnancy? Am I against it? And I said, it doesn't matter. It's just you, man. Like, be for it in one take, be against it in another take. It really doesn't matter. It'll just be you. And it's really, it's surreal for me to watch those scenes because they all use their real names. And it's amazing how, like, our actual group dynamic kind of worked its way into the movie, kind of unknowingly at the time. The beard thing just kind of came up in one of the rehearsals because it's something that Evan used to do. Me and Evan did it once years ago, and then we were like, "Who's the guy growing the beard?" And then it just kind of became Martin. But what's funny is when we're all hanging out, Martin is kind of the guy everyone makes fun of for no reason I can think of. But then in the movie, he was the guy with the beard, and everyone was making fun of him, and I think he was very unhappy about that. Well, we kind of suckered him into playing the role that he would naturally play. But it's funny because it's him. I mean, when he watches it, I know he's just like, oh, it's everyone making fun of me. That's bullshit. And I'm like, it's funny because it's you we're making fun of. The look on your face that you actually hate us. That's what's funny about it. And he actually does. Yeah. He really took, that wasn't even a real beard, but he really took it personally.
Well, I guess I don't have to tell you there were some women who were upset because the Katherine Heigl character goes through with the pregnancy and there isn't more, at least discussion in the film about abortion, but it turns out there was a scene that was shot.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that this was going to be an issue. You know, to me, the interesting part of the movie is people deciding not to have an abortion. And, you know, from my perspective, I think that there are certainly people that the second they get pregnant, no matter what the circumstances are, there's a part of them that says, well, I'm not doing that. And there's people that would do that. But this was just a story about somebody that would not do that. So it was interesting, and I knew it would happen where people would say, why don't they talk about abortion more? So, which is a hilarious comedy area. That's always funny. When people say that, I'm like, you're clearly not kind of a funny person.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
The movie's 8 minutes long if she gets an abortion.
We could have had a hilarious, you know how I know you should get an abortion routine.
You know, but when we shot the scene, you know, here's what I was going for, and some people get it, some people don't. But what I was going for was more that this guy gets a girl pregnant, and then it's really about him realizing that his friends are in a different phase of life than him, and the second that this woman gets pregnant, the friendships, in a way, don't work anymore. And to show his friends give terrible advice about what you do when you get a girl pregnant wasn't really about the abortion conversation. It was about the, oh my God, I'm completely alone and isolated in how to handle this. I have no friends I can turn to. And that for Katherine, you know, when you see the heartbeat, it's pretty hard to make that decision. Whatever you decide to do, it certainly makes it more difficult. And then you see her mother and you see she's very controlling, and her mother pushes so hard for the abortion, almost as an act of rebellion, she leans the other way. And then when Seth is open to being helpful to her, she sees a little lifeboat. But so we shot a lot of abortion debate just so I had it, because I didn't know how it would ultimately play out. So what I think we're going to show you now is something that's not in the movie,
really,
but a very extensive, incredibly offensive abortion discussion with Seth and all of his friends. And I apologize in advance to all of you.
All right.
I can't believe you did this. You fucked everything up, man.
She's gonna want a piece of the site, man. She knew just what she was doing. I tell you what, as soon as she saw the tip of your dick, she said, this guy is Jewish, he's got money, and I'm gonna trap him.
That's right. The lack of foreskin literally is like an ATM card to a woman.
She gets half of your share. That's 1 out of every 6 breasts we show. She gets paid.
Gosh, she fucked everything up. You fucked everything up. You should have worn a condom.
She wants a child that's one of the chosen people, man. 1 in 100 times you use a condom, it's not gonna work. That means you're gonna get her pregnant.
It means if you have sex 100 times, you are practically guaranteed that a woman will get impregnated.
You gotta pick one of the fail-safe methods, man. You gotta know the science, like the rhythm method. Woman can't get pregnant on her period or 17 days after her period. That's just science.
No, that's bullshit, man. Sperm can sit in there and live for days under the proper conditions and then make its move into the urethra.
Look, the real point is not to get yourself in this position. That's what you have to realize. You gotta know all the tricks. Like, for example, if a woman's on top, she can't get pregnant.
Well, that's true. Everyone knows that.
Also, if a woman thinks that you're not gonna be a good genetic match, her body won't take with the stuff, you know?
It spits the semen right out.
I often, after sex, ask a woman to go for a quick jog because all of the movement and being upright like that, it drains right out, dude. She wouldn't be pregnant if you'd had sex in the hot tub. The heat and the water combined.
Jets.
Yeah, they don't stand a chance, these things. There's millions of them floating around in our jacuzzi, but whatever. None of us are gonna get pregnant.
You know what I think you should do? Take care of it. Oh my God.
Take it easy, Jay.
It's not a real thing yet, man. It's only 2 months old. It doesn't have any memories. It's not just a bunch of cells.
You
Take it easy.
monster.
What's the big problem with abortion?
That word. Why would you abort something like that?
It's not killing a baby.
How do you know that? When does a soul start?
Jay, do you remember shit from when you were 2 months old, besides the fact that you loved The Cure?
Dude, you should get a vasectomy now.
Or at least your tubes tied.
You already got one coming. We don't need any more, dude.
No, don't listen to them.
No, he should have... A vasectomy's wrong now?
Yes, a vasectomy is wrong.
But how is a vasectomy wrong? That's ridiculous.
Okay, man. So you think sperm is alive?
Yes, yes. There are lifelike qualities in sperm. Semen, it's like in Dune. You know, the spice melange? The spice extends life. Semen extends life.
Can we fucking abort Jay? Can we just abort Jay? Is that possible? Anyone who references Dune should be aborted. You take it back, Jonah. Do you think that every sperm that lives in Martin's beard should live and join our society?
Well, obviously Martin's beard is an exception.
When you jerk off, do you run over to your gym socks afterwards and try and breathe life back into every little sperm?
You're a Philistine. Jonah, mark my words, you will be reduced to a chubby, sweaty little pillar of salt, all right?
That's the weird part. It's probably gonna happen. I just have a quick question. Do you use that Canadian flag tattoo as a cum target of some sort? How many points do you get if you hit the leaf? Like 1 million?
Jonah, I am a patriot. This is a tribute to my country and my countrymen. I always aim right.
Right into a dude's ass.
Ben, you cannot let these monsters have any part of your child's life, all right? I'm gonna be there to rear your child.
You hear that, Ben? Don't let him near the kid. He wants to rear your child.
Please.
Guys.
What?
Oh, Ben.
What a glorious time, think of that.
Yeah.
I think there's more solid medical knowledge in that 7 minutes.
But what's funny is when we started showing the movie, because the audience didn't yet know any of the actors that intimately or like them, it didn't go over the way it just went over when we first started showing
No, people hated us. They really did not like me or my friends in the early versions of the movie, because we're like, let's just show them the raw shit, and then it's like, these guys are dicks.
Talk, Seth, about working with Katherine Heigl, because I was thinking of someone, the size of, Reese Witherspoon had been in that role.
It would have looked physically dangerous for me to impregnate her.
Renee Zellweger.
Yeah.
So she's a big girl.
She's around my height, nowhere near my weight, I would imagine. Maybe on Mars. But she was great. We did read with a ton of girls. Almost any actress you could imagine in a movie. And it did. I'm very loud and big and... and I just, lots of the movies, us just screaming at each other. And if you have me just screaming at this 90-pound girl, it looks like I may eat her. It looks like I'm one step away from just snatching her up and chewing her head off. So it was important to have someone that could really, give it back as much as I was giving it. And when she came in, it was just... She scared the shit out of me. I mean, she's just tall, and she's very statuesque, and she's in a Steven Seagal movie, so she could handle herself. She kills 7 terrorists in Under Siege 2. So physically, she can deal.
There's some serious rage coming in.
There is some serious rage. I remember, we would do the scene. The audition scene was the scene when we're driving to the gynecologist's office, and she kicks me out of the car, and we were arguing, and Judd just told her, just argue how you argue in real life. So she kicks me out of the car, and I was like, can I get back in the car? She said, don't talk to me in that voice. I was like, what voice? And she's like, that voice. I was like, okay, can I get back? And like, oh, you're going to use that voice now? I just remember thinking, like, I feel so bad for Josh Kelly. And it
not
was
that bad.
Yeah, not that bad, because he's a handsome singing dude. But it was clear, you know. It's funny. I did SNL, and Jason Sudeikis we had lunch with him the day Katherine Heigl auditioned, which I didn't remember, but he actually mentioned that, you know, the last time I saw you, you had just read with Katherine Heigl. And all you guys were saying was how scary she was, but how you thought that she was, you know, the one that could actually pull it off.
Leslie Mann gets angry in this movie, too.
And at home.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't going to say anything.
Do you want to elaborate on the connection between the home arguments and the movie arguments?
Well, in a lot of ways, the movie is two phases of me and Leslie's relationship. And so what I wanted to do, and I was really happy that she had the courage to do it, was to just explore some of the, you know, us at our worst. And so, yes, Leslie did kick me out of the car on the way to the gynecologist's office. And then that was always weird, because when she gets mad about something, I don't remember what, and she's like, get out of the car. Get out of the car. And I'm like, oh, come on, get out of the car. And then now I'm out of the car, and, you know, and I'm thinking, now, am I supposed to go to the appointment now? Or do I go home? And if I go home, she'll be mad that I didn't make a point to get to the appointment? How do I get through this hormonal madness? But I wanted to show, you know, that clip with Martin Starr is based on kind of what I did every day when I was a kid, which is I wasn't good at sports, so I'd go home and watch Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin show. And after I made it, Jake Kasdan said, that's the most personal thing you've ever done, that piece. So in writing this movie, I wanted it to be very personal to me, but also to involve all the actors, where they would tell me stories about their marriage. So it's, you know, it in the end becomes a collage of a lot of issues that everyone goes through. Yeah. But some of the stuff with me and Leslie is specific to arguments that we've had, or her feelings that I'm flippant or detached at times.
So let's roll the fantasy baseball sequence.
I've never done this, but I've dreamed of it.
Yeah. Paul Rudd does this, though.
There's nobody up there.
Thank you.
I guess I was wrong.
I told you. Can we get out of here, please?
Did you hear that?
I didn't hear anything.
Delgado.
Excellent choice. Too bad I got him 3 rounds ago.
You're still on the clock.
Oh, shit!
You gotta do something.
Yeah, Hideki Matsui.
You just took my whole outfield. Sorry, Charlie.
What is this?
Debbie.
What the fuck is this?
It's our fantasy baseball draft. We said no wives.
Your fantasy what?
It's our draft. The fantasy baseball. I told you all about this. Got Matsui.
Hey, Pete, don't let the door hit you in the vagina on the way out. Come on, who's going?
Prince, you're on the clock. I should have told you.
What else have you been lying about?
Nothing.
That guy said, don't let the door hit in the vagina on the way out.
Yeah, I heard him.
That was hilarious.
It's just that I know you've been mad because I've been working so much and I didn't want to upset you.
I wouldn't be mad. I don't get mad.
It's a fantasy baseball draft. I'm not cheating or anything.
Oh, this is worse.
How is this worse?
This is you wanting to be with your friends more than your family.
Look, the reason I make that up is because if I told you what I was really doing, you would just get mad. So you think I'm seeing a band, I do my fantasy draft, and it's win-win.
Well, what'd you do last Wednesday night when you said you went to see a band?
I went to the movies.
With who?
By myself.
What'd you see?
Spider-Man 3.
Why do you want to go by yourself? Why didn't you ask me to go?
Because I needed to get away, you know, with work and you and the kids. Sometimes I just need some time to myself.
I need time for myself. I want time for myself, too. You're not the only one.
It's not that big of a deal.
I like Spider-Man.
Okay, so let's see Spider-Man 3 next week.
I to go see it now. I don't want to have to ask you to ask me. I want you to just come up with it on your own.
What? I don't even know what to say. What do you want me to do?
You just think because you don't yell that you're not mean. But this is mean.
I'm not being mean. I'm being honest. You're telling me I need to be honest.
No, you're not. You're lying.
I'm doing it because I need to keep my sanity a little bit.
You know what? I don't want you at the house anymore, okay?
Come on.
Shit, she's coming back.
Well, ouch. There's an immortal line in there. Just because you're not yelling doesn't mean, well, I'm garbling it. I'm garbling it, but that's the line.
Yeah, that's something my wife said to me once. Just because you don't yell doesn't mean you're not mean. That's actually an interesting lesson that I took from my marriage, which is, you know, when you're married to an actress, they're very emotional and they're expressive. And as a weird nerd writer who likes hanging out in his room watching the Merv Griffin show, I'd be kind of quiet. And so, like, I thought that I was always right in fights just because I didn't get upset. That I would be just, you know, feeling like it's like for some reason to put me in a superior position, and because she was getting upset, that she was wrong. And then actually, like, that realization was kind of a big realization in our marriage.
You ever
she
wonder
convinced me that I'm the dick.
You are.
Why do women sleep with us at all? Isn't it kind of a miracle? And when you see that scene with those four guys...
That's not the worst mental image in the universe, right?
The three of us.
Yeah, exactly. With the combined age.
We have to move on to Superbad.
Let's get into the real New Yorker shit.
The script goes through many variations. It keeps getting turned down. The script keeps getting better. Yeah. But you sort of aced yourself out of playing the role that you wrote for yourself simply by getting older.
Yeah.
So, but...
I outgrew it. No, it was a very hard process. You know, we started when we were around 13 or 14 writing it, and it was, you know, around Undeclared that I felt like the script was kind of in a presentable place. So I was around 18 or 19 or something like that. And then Judd read it, and there were some other producers that read it, and people really liked it, and we really were pushing it hard to sell it. And I think if it got made at that point, it would have been pretty similar to how it is now. It wasn't a universal way. But one funny story is there was another producer who kind of partnered with Judd on trying to get it made, who was very passionate about it, extremely, and he went on dozens of meetings with us trying to get it made, and he just pushed and pushed, and just no one would do it. And then a few years later, he became the president of one of the studios, literally the president of a movie studio. And so me and Judd were like, fucking A, it's happening, you know? We got an inside man. And then we went to him, and he's just like, no, I can't do this. You seen how many dick jokes there are in this thing? We can't do that. And that was very interesting to me. And but not entirely. I mean, it was, at one point I could understand, you know, we would hear the expression fundamentally unmakeable a lot. Which is hard to argue with. I mean, how do you argue that something isn't fundamentally unmakeable? I mean, like, we could physically shoot it, but it just seemed, people said, you know, it's about kids who can't see this movie, you know? But American Pie had already come out, and to us, I mean, it was clear as day that a movie like this can reach a large audience, but I guess, you know, fucking a pie is a lot easier to swallow than dick drawings, I guess. I don't know.
Such a fine line.
Exactly. That's, you know, next issue of The New Yorker.
Actually, it may be easier for us to talk dirty than for you guys to talk clean, but we'll get back to that. Let's run the first Superbad clip.
Seth, get off the field!
Dude, get out of here. They're gonna make me run laps again. Dude, just fucking listen, okay? Jules and her stupid fucking friend came up to me, and they asked me to buy her alcohol. But not just her, for a whole party. You know what that means? By some divine miracle, we were paired up, and she actually thought of me. Thought of me enough to decide that I was the guy she would trust with the whole funness of her party. She wants to fuck me. She wants my dick in or around her mouth.
Did you ever think that maybe she's just using you to get her alcohol? She doesn't want your dick.
No, she's got an older brother. And she could have asked him, but she asked me. She looked me in the eyes and said, Seth, Mama's making a pubic salad, and I need some Seth's own dressing. She's DTF. She's down to fuck, man.
Right.
P and G. She wants to fuck, man. Tonight is a night that fucking is an actual possibility.
You just sound like an idiot. You're not gonna be able to sleep with her, man.
No, dude, I don't want to talk a lot of shit, okay? But she's gonna be at the party, and she's gonna be drunk, and she likes me at least a little, enough to get with me. At the very least, I'll make out with her. 2 weeks hand job, month blow job, whatever. And then I make her my girlfriend. And I've got like 2 solid months of sex. By the time college rolls around, I'll be like the Iron Chef at Pound and Vaj.
Okay, can you just get out of here and we'll talk about this later?
Fuck, Evan, we're down 2 points.
Fucking calm down, Greg. It's soccer. It's soccer.
Fuck you, man.
Hey, Greg, why don't you go piss your pants again?
That was like 8 years ago, asshole.
People don't forget. Do you want to hear the best part? Becca, you do the same thing with her. When you guys are shit-faced at the party, you get with her. This is our last party as high school people. I fully ignored my hatred for Becca and coming up with this plan.
I should buy Becca alcohol?
Yeah, that's when we pimp. That way you know she'll be drunk. You know when you hear girls saying like, oh, I was so shit-faced last night. I shouldn't have fucked that guy. We could be that mistake.
Have you talked to Fogel?
All right, you talk to Becca, I'll talk to that retard Fogel. Don't worry.
Seth, get off the field.
Come on.
Get in there.
No, I'm not.
One of the things that works so well is that Jonah is a hysterical, huffy guy, and Michael Cera is placid as a lake. I mean, and has a delayed pause, that pause thing he does, which is sheer genius, which somehow makes ordinary line very funny.
Yeah, it was actually, you know, we cast Michael Cera first. I was shooting a movie that will probably never come out, called Fanboys with Jay Baruchel, who's a good friend of mine who's in Knocked Up, and I told him that Superbad was going to get made, and literally the first thing he said was, you guys got to hire Michael Cera. He's the funniest guy ever. And I was like, is that the kid from Arrested Development? And I remember Evan telling me earlier that he had once watched an episode of Arrested Development and stopped because Michael Cera was so bad. and we told Michael Cera that, and it's not true at all. Evan's just an idiot. But that's what happened. And then we auditioned Michael Cera, and he's clearly a genius. And we cast him, and then the problem was he was supposed to be like the not funny guy of the 2 guys, but he was infinitely funnier than everyone else who came in and auditioned for the funny guy. And it became really hard to find someone to play against him. And Jonah was always saying, put me in the movie. And we always said, you're too old, just because we know him. And then after we auditioned around 150 people who weren't that funny, we looked at Jonah one day and thought, maybe you're not too old. and then when we paired them together, we literally, it was on the set of Knocked Up one day, and we went into my trailer with a video, with the behind-the-scenes video camera, and shot Jonah reading that scene. And then we happened to be shooting at the Sony lot, and we literally walked the tape from my trailer to Amy Pascal's office, who's the head of Sony, and showed it to her, and we walked back and told Jonah that he was in the movie. And it literally happened over the course of like an hour.
And the third guy, the uber nerd, who's
Fogel.
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that was really hard to find also. In real life, me and Evan were best friends, and we have another best friend, Fogel, who's still our best friend. And he's nothing like what he is in the movie. He's actually much cooler than we are by a lot of estimates. But it was really hard to find, you know, a nerdy kid who thought he was cool. That was basically what we were looking for. And we sent out letters to high school drama departments asking, you know, there was a character description of like an 18-year-old who looks 13, who's a loser, who thinks he's awesome. And
that's easy.
Yeah, and it's really funny hearing this from Chris Mintz-Plass's side of the story, who plays Fogel ultimately. Is he's like, I was in the hall one day, my friend came up to me and said, "This is you." And it was the first thing he ever even auditioned for, was our movie. And I remember in the audition, he asked me and Evan to sign his script because he was just so blown away that the writers were there. And it was amazing. It was one of those rare things where the kid, Bill Hader was in the audition with me, and it was like he auditioned and walked out. It was one of those things where everyone looked at each other and were like, that's the fucking
Not
guy.
only is he pale and thin and has a needle nose, he has a voice like if you plucked a reed from in Southampton and blew into it, it would just rattle. He has incredibly...
A voice like a Southampton reed.
Like a Southampton.
That was actually in the script also.
All right, so let's roll the next one. Give you a little bit of him.
Fuck! Over!
Okay, what's this? I got it right on the nose.
You're gonna fuck it up. Fuck it back!
Under!
Ah! Steel hammer. That doesn't make any sense.
You're a fucking pussy.
Okay, great. Okay, McLovin. See if you can do it.
The kid's gonna nail it.
Come on, McLovin, do
Go
it, buddy.
for it.
Come on, buddy. Bring it.
.08.
That's my boy.
It's beginner's luck. Beginner's luck.
So, what's it like to have guns?
It is awesome, McLovin. I mean,
great.
like, it's mind-blowing. I haven't had one for long, only a few months, but I'll tell you, it's like having two cocks.
Yep.
If one of your cocks could kill someone.
Can I hold one?
What?
Can I hold one of your guns?
Yeah, sure. With me. Why not? Everyone should hold a gun at least a couple times.
Have a blast.
Have a blast.
I've never held one of these before. Are they hard to shoot?
Well, if you're Michaels, they are. You can't
What?
shoot worth dick.
I can't shoot. What do you... Wait, you honestly think I can't shoot?
I'm telling you right now, you cannot shoot.
I shot that cat last week.
It was already dead, man.
I still shot it.
That cat was dead.
There's only one way to settle this, guys.
Shoot off.
Shoot off!
A fucking pussy. You're a
listen to
fucking
officer.
pussy. If you make this, we're no longer friends, Michaels. You're a
Cheating.
fucking pussy.
Cheating.
Suck on the nutsator!
All right, that was a lucky shot, dude. That was a lucky shot. Hey, I think it's done. All right.
Can I shoot one?
Yeah, go nuts. Go nuts.
Have a good time, man. Empty the clip on it, man. Shit!
Bill! Shotgun! Whoa!
Well, we should also say, Greg Mottola, the director of the movie, who directed a bunch of episodes of Undeclared, really took this movie to a completely higher level than it had any deserve. It didn't deserve the right to go to.
No, yeah, definitely.
I just feel so great that we tricked him into doing it.
I know, it's amazing.
It's everything we ever dreamed it could be and more, and so much of it was because of his stewardship of the final rewrites of the script and how well he directed it. And, to bring someone on who's a real artist to take on this material and add more complexity to it is really
He had done
why it
Day
works.
Trippers, right?
Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
A decade ago.
And he's...
and he directed a lot of Arrested Developments, actually, so he'd worked with Michael Cera before.
And Bill Hader is here. Where's Bill Hader? Come on, Bill. Stand up, Bill Hader. Bill Hader. Television's Bill Hader.
TV's Bill Hader. But we had actually done a table read in the year 2001 with the cast of Undeclared for Superbad, and I read Seth, and Jason Segel read the other part, Evan, and Greg Mottola was at that table read, and basically said that day, like, if you guys ever make this, I'd like to be considered. And we were like, this is never getting made. But years later, we, remembered that, and he's, we've remained friends with him this whole time, so we were just honored that he would do it, and really, there's any moments where you're thinking, this movie is a real quality, that's because of him. Like, any shot that looks good, any music that goes along with anything, all Greg Mottola. We had none of that in our minds when we were writing it.
Let's show I guess it's the next to last scene in the movie, and a very delicate, hard to pull off scene.
Listen. And then she said she was going to give me a blowjob.
I can't believe she said that to you.
I have no idea.
What was she thinking?
I don't even know.
I gotta tell you something, Evan.
What?
I was in your room like 3 weeks ago. Are you taking a shit? And I saw your housing, like, forms. So I knew you and Fogel were gonna live together. You know?
I'm sorry, man. I don't know. I should have told you that. I don't know why I didn't.
Don't be sorry. I should be sorry. I was being a dick. I was being a big dick to you.
No, listen, Seth, I want you to know I don't want to live with Fogel. I don't want to live with him. I just don't, I'm afraid to live with strangers. I can't do it.
I know.
I can't believe you saved me. You saved me. Can't believe I owe you so much. You cared. I love you. I love you, man.
I love you. I love you. I'm not even embarrassed to say it. I love you.
I'm not embarrassed.
Love you.
I love you. It's like, why don't we say that every day? Why can't we say it more often?
I just love you. I just want to go to the rooftops and scream, I love my best friend, Evan.
We should go up on my roof.
For sure.
Like when you went away for Easter on your vacation, I missed you.
I missed you too.
I want the world to know. It's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Boop, boop, boop. Come here. Come here, man.
I love you.
That takes some guts for those actors to play that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it seemed funny, so that makes everything easier, you know. I find with actors who work in comedy, if there's something that resembles a joke, they'll do anything, you know. But it was actually harder for me and Evan to write, I'm sure, than it was for them to perform, just because it was, as we were writing it, we knew, like, all we are writing is us explaining to everyone we know that we don't love each other. That's like, as we just thought, this is going to require so much explanation. I mean, me and Evan, like, we've literally never hugged each other. We have the least emotional relationship I think you would ever have. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that, you know, us getting older made the movie a lot better, because we would have never written that scene when we were 13 years old. I mean, that's the most horrifying thing you could ever do, is admit that you actually care for a male friend of yours when you're 13. But then once we kind of realized a funny joke for the whole movie is that they're kind of trying to sleep with these girls the whole movie, but instead they kind of sleep with each other. And once that kind of dawned on us, we thought, well, that's a really funny way to go with it.
There were a couple of funny reviews where they're like, they wimped out because they should have had sex. Like,
yeah, there was a lot of there's a lot of guys. Yeah, there was a really big article saying, like, clearly we wanted to show them having sex with each other, but we were just not brave enough to do that. Which was very weird to me. That had literally never occurred to me. After I read it, I thought that would have been funny. Just the physical image of Michael and Jonah having sex would have just all sorts of weird positions with. But emotionally, I never read that into it, I guess. But it was. I mean, they actually do really like each other. They do love each other, Michael and Jonah, I think, and. Every time every time Jonah does that to Michael, I'm jealous of him. I want to do that to Michael.
Yeah, it's a real love scene. I think we've got about 10 minutes, and we should turn up the lights and take some questions. So there will be mics. There's always now a moment of ghastly silence at the beginning of the question.
Start it off, Bill.
It would be so cool if Philip Roth walked to the mic. Right now.
Why are you here?
Anybody? All right, here comes some.
Ringer tea.
Keep them short. Keep them short, okay?
I'm wondering if there's any advice you guys generally give to people who want to break into the business.
I just tell people that most of the work that you read in television and film is bad, and that if you only focus on doing good work, that it will work out. And most people focus on the business or career goals, but if all you focus on is doing something from your heart that's original, it really does tend to work out, if you're good.
I tell people to become friends with Judd.
If you were teaching film school, and there were a class of budding directors, wouldn't you say, write your own material, keep the budgets down, work with your friends also?
That is where I have landed, just mainly because I'm a wuss about large budgets because they scare me. I kind of can't handle, I made The Cable Guy, and afterwards everyone got fired at the studio. And that was, I felt bad about it, I mean, you talk to people for 2 years and suddenly you're like, wow, they got fired? I mean, not just because of that movie, but, a few movies. But so now I kind of wuss out on the budgets, and I feel much more creatively brave as a result of having a lower budget.
Yeah.
I teach a media course, and we've had a lot of fun in September talking about Superbad. It's just such a good film and so rich. And the big debate in the class was, is the character of Seth gay? Not acknowledged to himself.
Yes.
But... So, I mean, it's partly all those penises. It's also that very beautiful, touching moment going down the escalator at the end as he's looking back longingly at his friends. So my students charged me with the responsibility for asking you the question about Seth's, the character Seth's, unacknowledged sexuality.
Wow. Had a revelation just now. So I'd like you to be my part. No, I never thought he was gay. To be in short,
no more than all of us are gay.
No more than all of us are gay. Everyone's a little gay. Come on. After a few beers. We just thought it was over-sexualized was kind of what we were going for. I mean, the internet coming out was directly linked up with me and my friends going through puberty. I literally think the day that broadband came out was the day my first boner happened. Coincidentally, and the flood of easily accessible pornography was then, the gates were open. And it was a hard time to be a horny kid, because Britney Spears had just come out and all this stuff. Maxim magazine had just come out, and it was really like, in the scene where they're in the 7-Eleven looking at the pornos, that's what we did every morning, and it was just everywhere. It was unavoidable. There was just boobs and dicks everywhere, and you just couldn't get away from it. And the drawings, we just thought it'd be fun. Penis drawings are funnier than vagina drawings. That's all that is.
Who did the drawings?
Evan Goldberg's brother, who is a lawyer.
Hey, I just would like to...
Me, yes.
Reading imitators already.
This clearly was a prize. It's a contest.
Exactly. If we shake hands, the world will fold in on itself. According to Time Cop.
That's my brother, and I'll tell everyone this, so I'll stop getting that confused look on his face when people compare him.
Mr. Rogen, Mr. Apatow, I really enjoy you guys work, and what I think is really commendable about both of your guys' work is just I really feel like the comedy and the truth that I get from the stuff that I watch is really that I feel like you guys have brought the awkwardness of real life back to comedy and back to television and back to movies. I think that's really, really wonderful, because I think that there's more. I think that the laughs you get from that are a lot richer, because they sort of come with understanding and with everybody being there. And I know you were talking, Mr. Apatow, about some of your.
Why is it funny to show me respect? Let the man call me Mr. Apatow. I'm enjoying it.
I know you were talking about some of Knocked Up being autobiographical, and obviously Superbad a lot of that was autobiographical, or at least some of it.
Except for the gay part.
So I was wondering if you guys could, once again, I'd like to thank you for that, because I've really enjoyed your work, but I'd like if you could talk a little bit about just, I think it's something that's very daring and something that's kind of ballsy to bring, your own life into film. And I wanted to know if you could talk about sort of bringing the awkwardness of real life into movies and television.
Well, I was really influenced by people like Loudon Wainwright III, who has very confessional songs about his life, and Warren Zevon's last record he recorded when he had lung cancer, and was partially about that experience. So I tried to look at people like that as an example, to have the courage to feel like things that have happened to me, or feelings that I have, are relatable to people, or even worth telling people. It's very hard to write something about yourself and think that anyone gives a shit. I mean, it's very difficult for me to get to that place where the small details of my life I believe anyone cares about. So I'm glad that the movie did well, because it'll hopefully give me the courage to try it again.
Me too.
This is for Mr. Rogen.
Monsignor Rogen.
Esquire.
Esquire.
I was just wondering, as a college dropout myself, did you ever kind of lose the will to keep following your dream and feel kind of jaded? I mean, I know you had Mr. Apatow's support, but did it ever become really hard to persist in the acting world and writing world?
There was, after Undeclared, I kind of assumed I wasn't going to be an actor, to be honest. I auditioned for tons and tons of things that Sean William Scott now stars in, and I just felt like I was beat. I thought, fuck, there's a guy kind of like me, but who's handsome and funny. So I honestly just thought I would keep writing, and yeah, I did get jaded, I would say, at a point, somewhere maybe in the middle of my third year of unemployment. You start to kind of blame Hollywood. I probably had a lot of tirades about how the Hollywood system is messed up and keeping quality products down, but I was probably just drunk and not actually writing, which I should have been doing at the time. I think one of the good things about having no education is I'm forced to succeed, or I will be homeless. I really have no option.
Thank you.
I'm a lousy thief. Yeah.
David, Judd, Mr. Rogen. Thanks for doing this today. It's a lot of fun. My question's for Judd. You worked as a writer on The Larry Sanders Show with Gary Shandling, who we just saw. In hindsight, it stands up as a great, very consistently funny and sort of dark and incisive show about Hollywood, with what looks in hindsight also like kind of this all-star team of young writers, many of whom have gone on to create other shows and work on great projects. And obviously the actors in that show, many of whom were young at the time, have gone on to great things. Did you have the sense while working on that show that it was kind of like this special team, or was it just one of many shows that you worked on?
Well, I worked on the Ben Stiller show, and it got canceled, and that aired the same time the first season of the Larry Sanders Show aired. And I was writing, I wrote the Grammy Awards for Gary and had written jokes for him. And so after the show was canceled, he offered me a job to be a consulting producer there a few days a week. And then the other few days a week, I worked for The Critic, this animated show that James Brooks produced that Reese and Gene from The Simpsons created. So I had this really weird education at that time, because half the week was with Gary and it was all about getting to the core of people and truth in your writing, and then the rest of the week was this really difficult animation comedy writing where every line has to be funny and every image has to be funny. These guys would sit for like 2 hours on like one line, which I found annoying. I mean, they just had such patience to like, that's not funny enough. And they would just sit there. You can imagine like 12 like Harvard guys like this. Thinking of things that the critic would say, and then talking about Fermat's theorem in between.
And then you'd come up with, it stinks.
Yeah. But Larry Sanders, the whole time it was happening, it felt like a very special experience, and Gary was just an incredible teacher of what he values. And then all these celebrities would show up every week, and you would get to write funny scenes where they would insult themselves, which was enjoyable. But you could tell that it was something great was happening, mainly because it was more just amazing to watch Gary, like to watch Gary rewrite a scene or to tell you what it was really about. I mean, there were moments where he would rewrite a scene in like 10 minutes, and then it would be like the best scene in the history of the show. And he's, you know, a very brilliant guy.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, Judd and Seth, the thing about your projects that I always enjoy is the way you balance, like, basically having the comedy in there and having a great storyline, getting to know the characters, which I seem to rarely see in comedies today. I was just wondering how you would achieve that balance.
I think what Judd has taught me more than anything is to start with a very simple emotional story. And I just know from my own experience working on rewriting other comedies that almost no comedies begin with that. Bratz, for example. But it's, and I really think that's, you know, the most valuable thing. I know that's the most valuable thing Judd has taught me, and what makes Superbad not just, you know, 2 hours of dick jokes, is that. And it's almost, I mean, honestly, the jokes kind of come last. A lot of the time is spent on the emotions of the story and making sure the scenes feel real and relatable and are grounded in truth and experiences of us or people we know. And then we kind of just hope that if you get a bunch of funny people on set, then funny shit will happen also. And Judd spends, you know, a lot of time writing a hilarious script with a lot of great jokes, but that's never the real emphasis. If I was to read one of Judd's scripts and it wasn't funny, I wouldn't think, oh, this isn't a good one. I just think, oh, we just haven't put the jokes in yet. But that I think is maybe why these movies might come across slightly differently than Bratz.
You guys have done amazing things for the adolescent male and young men. Could you do the same thing for women? Can you imagine a girl trio or quartet or a female protagonist of one of your movies?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of those in development and, you know, things that we're playing around with. And, you know, one of the things I like about Knocked Up is I feel like it talks about certain issues and for women that you don't hear about very often in comedies. You know, with the Debbie character about just, you know, aging and mortality and is it too late to dump your husband? And I mean, it was fun to see a lot of that work. And again, as a dude, you know, you're slowly kind of gaining the confidence to try to speak to those issues because when you're a man, you may not understand it as well as a woman. And I had mentioned this to you. You know, one of the things that gave me the courage to try it all on Knocked Up was that there was a very nice review for the 40-Year-Old Virgin that talked about Catherine Keener's character, and then you spoke about how they were in love at the end, but you could tell it was going to be a very difficult relationship, but in the end it's clearly worth it to Steve Carell's character. And I thought, oh wow, he noticed something that actually I intended but never really thought about too consciously. And it gave me some of the courage to try to go farther, and I hope to in the future. But it's a difficult area because guys are just dumb, and it's hard to. Women are very, very complicated, and it takes a long time to understand what the hell my wife's talking about. And I'm trying the best I can.
All right.
Just very quickly, can I just say one of my favorite movies of the last year was The TV Set.
Oh.
And I just think that was great, and there was such brilliant...
It's out on DVD, everybody.
Yeah, but I just
written and directed by Jake Kasdan. It's about some of our television
I thought the performances were brilliant. I think, you know, it was a great movie, and I just wondered if you could just talk a little about it, because it seemed to maybe got you know, a little eclipsed or?
Well, it's the TV set is about, it's David Duchovny playing a character that's he has a beard and had back surgery. And, some of it is based on me, and some of it's based on Jake's issues with trying to get pilots picked up. And it shows how a TV show gets ruined. It wasn't the greatest marketing campaign. I don't think anyone here has heard of it. So that's how I know it didn't work out. But the movie's fantastic, and it just came out on DVD, and Sigourney Weaver's in it, and it's very, very well observed.
It is brilliant. Yes. I think I think we're about out of time, and so I want to thank all of you very much for coming, and you have certainly been a great audience. Not exactly a tough crowd.
No, it's not bad.